The Coast mobile app is now available for download on iPhones and Android devices. You can become an insider directly through this app. This is a great option for our international listeners, and new users will also receive a free 2-week trial.
Dr. Roger Leir, the late Dr. Roger Leir, one of our favorite guests, a medical man, a podiatrist who became interested in the stories told by alleged alien abductees. And Dr. Leir lent some of his expertise to investigating further. He performed surgeries on people who were reporting anomalous, extraordinary experiences, people who said that they had unknown objects stuck into their body, and he would take them out and try to figure out what they were. Do some investigation, and toward the end of his career, toward the end of his life, he invited Jeremy Corbell to record forever, for posterity, one of these operations that he took place, and it was the focus of the operation was someone we've come to know as Patient 17. In a moment, Jeremy Corbell will share with us the story of how that project began, where it's led, and then we will meet Patient 17. All right, welcome back. Jeremy Corbell, why don't you tell us the story, how you came to be working with Dr. Roger Leir?
Yeah, Dr. Roger Leir asked me to film his surgery. He wanted me to make a film on him, and the liaison, or the person that set it up, is my business partner in the Citizen Hearing, Ruben Langdon. You know, as I always say, the unsung hero of the Citizen Hearing. He's really the machine there. And, he got me in contact with Dr. Leir because, he knew about my films, and Dr. Leir got to see some of my clips and some of what I did, and we hit it off, and he was adamant. He says, look, I've been following this path for decades. There is something to this. I like your film work. I want you to make a movie on me. And, I was so hesitant. I honestly, this was not the part of ufology that I wanted to look into. And he just kind of won me over, and I said, okay, look, Roger, if this is BS, if there's nothing to it or you're hoaxing something, I'm going to out you. And he says, I'm not. I'm doing this. This means a lot to me. Please, will you document it? And that's really what happened, and that's how it went down. So I was invited to the final surgery. I was able to document it, but then it just got bizarre. We lost Dr. Leir, and it was like everybody was kind of blind at that point. Where do you go? What do you do? And particularly the patient 17. I mean, I like the guy immediately. He's a really intelligent, hardworking individual, and we just hit it off. I really liked him. And to see how he was left without answers, it was just astounding. I mean, I didn't know what to do besides pursue the story. So this poor individual, patient 17, had no idea that this was, the lenses were just going to be more focused on him because Dr. Leir was gone. But he's been a great sport about it. Being that he's a private person, he's really let me in. I think more than anything, it's our friendship. But yeah, he had no idea this was going to happen. He was really a private person.
We'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. Did you know going into this that part of what you would be documenting is the analysis of material that might be taken out of Patient 17?
Yeah, I knew that they did analysis on it, and so I was able, when Dr. Leir was alive, to go to the first, SEM or scanning electron microscopy of the actual object. And, Patient 17 was there, and there's this really uncanny moment in my film that, I ask him, would this shake the foundations of your faith if you found out that this was non-terrestrial? And he thought about it because he's a Christian. And he says, yeah, it would. And that was a really powerful moment. And so, yeah, I knew I was going to be documenting a little bit of the analysis, but kind of Dr. Leir was just, saying how not every lab does everything. Even Patient 17 was frustrated through this process when Dr. Leir was alive. And then, of course, when Dr. Leir passed away, there was no movement. Everybody was jumping to conclusions and saying whatever they wanted, but there was no movement. And that drove me crazy because I just want to know. So I was able to, get the object sent to a lab and paid for and got broad spectrum elemental analysis and isotopic analysis of 2 different elements. And that you will see in the film, George.
So you talked about it briefly the last time you were here. Is there anything you can expand on? Is there anything anomalous, unusual about the analysis, or would you rather not get into that?
Well, no, I mean, everything about this whole experience is anomalous. I mean, I have been up and down and through the rabbit hole and briar patch with this, and so has patient 17. I mean, this has been a roller coaster. You go to one scientist, and they're like, this is absolutely 100% anomalous. This has 35 different alloys in it, and this is absolutely constructed, and it is absolutely unusual. And there's even toxicity, within the piece. And if it was leaching into his body, I talked to a nanotoxicologist over a beer in Los Angeles and showed him. He was sitting next to me, and I showed him, the elements. And he says, yeah, from a toxicology standpoint, this should not be in his body. And if it was leaching at all, it wouldn't be good for him. So it's good he got it out because it was a foreign body. So there are anomalous things. The isotopes was a huge deal. It was a steep learning curve for me. And oddly enough, I'm going to say this, I've never said this before. You know how people say Bob Lazar is not a scientist? Out of everybody that I emailed these results to get their idea, Bob Lazar was the one guy that gave me more insights into the isotopes and elements than any other person. So he acted as the greatest scientist here. I had never told him, but I actually showed it to him, but I'll say it here. And his guidance was amazing. He's a total skeptic on this stuff, but he's willing to entertain my film questions,
And you were skeptical too. I mean, is that why you really didn't see yourself getting involved in this? You thought, well, alien abductions is a little too far out there for me?
Yes, I was skeptical too, and I still am skeptical about a number of things. There are things I can prove and things I can't, but yes, it was exactly that, George. I mean, it was like, I don't doubt that, we are being visited. I get that. By what? I don't know. But this idea that they would be chipping or tagging people, I mean, that just to me was just left field. But after hearing the experiences of patient 17 and seeing the effects of the experience, I mean, it is terrifying. I mean, he's a big guy, 6'9", and he's a tough, rugged individual, and brains and brawn, But to see him kind of terrified by these experiences. And, he was lured into this whole process, basically, of getting this cut out of his body. It didn't automatically be something that was in his mind to do. But when it happened, I have to say, he went deeper into these experiences. He doesn't want to remember some of them. And that's what I found so interesting. So I got sucked in to this story from the human perspective. And ultimately, E.T. or not, and you're watching the film, whatever this is, you'll be as frustrated as me at times. E.T. or not, this is quite an extraordinary experience for an ordinary individual.
It's a very human story, at least from our side of it. Well, let's bring him on. I'd like you to introduce him, Jeremy.
Sure. Well, I would like to introduce you to my good friend. We're calling Patient 17. And I just got to say, sorry, man, that this has gone so far. You never expected to have me, pushing that camera in your face all this time, but I really appreciate you letting me in and helping to tell your story, because I think it's really important that people hear what you've experienced through this process. So, hello, Patient 17.
Hey, guys. You're really right on that. It just supposed to have been one documentary and over, and here it is, number 3, and on coast to coast. So, would I do it again? Maybe. I mean, it's been interesting meeting everybody in this field and learning more than I thought I did. And it's been a pleasure working with you, Jeremy. That's probably the only reason why I'm doing this is I got to know you as a friend and your talents. And I would say you being groomed by the right guy out in Vegas. Maybe take his spot when he retires.
Well, listen, I
you guys are great.
I think what's really compelling to me about your story is that you had big questions. And this is what I was trying as a filmmaker, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But I was trying to help you get answers to basic questions. And, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, like, kind of what were some of the questions that you had going into this? What was it like meeting Dr. Leir? Did you like him? Was it frustrating? Tell me a little bit.
Well, when it started, it was with the pain in my knee and an X-ray and finding this thing, and then not thinking about it for 5 years, and then just by fluke ran into another producer that did UFO flick. Then he introduced me to Dr. Leir, did all the testing, X-rays, and I just mentioned a few experiences I had in Las Vegas, knowing people maybe at Area 51 or worked there in stories after living there for practically 20 years, and things started falling into place. And really, the only thing that really got me interested is when they were testing the object when it was still in my leg, and it was putting out some kind of signal or energy more than the camera they were using. That's got me interested. But living as an abductee and living the UFO story was not even what I ever thought.
So let me ask you: had you had a lifetime of experiences, anomalous experiences, the classic sort of alien abduction scenario?
Well, I actually started maybe the abductions as a child up to maybe teenager years, and then it stopped. And then back in, I'd say, the mid-'90s, I had a couple experiences of maybe seeing these, you want to call them typical grays in my bedroom, or the sensation of being capable, using the word beamed up, but you're being levitated right out of your bed straight up into wherever, and that's when you kind of blacked out, and I think I don't remember anything after that. But it just seemed, you start thinking back on experiences you had, which you kind of blown off, because when I was growing up, you didn't really hear about E.T. until the little guy with the glowing finger eating M&Ms. You just think Lost in Space and those kind of television shows, and all of a sudden in the middle of, this whole world of you guys and the guy from UFO Hunters and Ancient, all the different shows that are on the cable TV, and you start going, man, this is really worldwide and really happening. Then you start relating, well, I knew a guy at Test Center that supposedly murdered because he had a workman comp case, and they wouldn't pay him, so he was going to expose them, and that's another story. You find out 2 daughters and their mother had a missing time experience, and they came to. They're sitting differently in the car. So these are people I know, and it's like, this is really kidding. There's more people involved than you would think in this whole.
And I think that was kind of your point. When we first started talking, was you had these experiences, but you kind of felt isolated about it. I mean, like you wouldn't really tell your neighbor or tell people, because you said people just kind of laugh at it, or they don't want to know, or they stick their fingers in their ears, and they just don't want you to say what you're saying unless it affects them or someone that they love. But you said to me that when it actually happened.
Well, I really didn't live the story. I mean, I'm in my 50s now. What happened to me when I was 6 years old as a teenager, a lot of life experiences gone by. But what started this all off was the pain in my leg and getting X-rays and finding this object in my leg. And then from there, like I said, it lay dormant for a couple of years, so I met this other producer, and then it just opened wide up. I mean, everybody, after you're done the testing and the questionnaires, it's like you start thinking, this is for real. I mean, all indicators say this is it. But it is frustrating because the testing didn't go further than it did. Dr. Leir passed away. And then, trying to get custody of my implant or object, and you can't get to it to finally put this to rest. Is it or isn't? You have a guy, I think it's Mr. Nano. It's like, absolutely, 36 elements, solid metal, doesn't exist on the planet unless you, make it for specific use. Then the other people are like, impossible. So, you kind of walk down the middle. I mean, I still doubt what it is. I mean, you and I don't really know what it is, right? I mean, you kind of do, right. But you can't say it is 100%.
What was the feeling?
You'd be lying.
You were describing to me the other night. What was the feeling that you had when it was, removed from you? If you don't mind, just short.
Yeah, I knew you were going to bring that up. You're right. It was when they yanked it out of me and showed it to me, like, somebody delivering a baby. Here's your kid. It was like, that is one. It looks like it. It looks like others I've seen. And it was an eerie feeling. But now the testing's gone on. I've seen underneath the conic microscope and all that down at Seal Labs. it doesn't look like anything we understand. That's for sure. I mean, you can't look at it and say, there's the transistors, there's the knob. It's just an object, and we have no idea if it is how it works. I mean,
could you address the
exotic metal? I mean,
could you address
the
the
reason
idea
I went
about
along with Jeremy is because he put the story together so well. I mean, other stories I've watched or I was involved in were kind of Variety magazine, where Jerry is a storyteller and he tells what happened. I was impressed. I said, I'll go along with it. And like Jeremy says, a year later, we're here on the radio talking about it.
Could you talk about the anonymity aspect of it? We're calling you Patient 17. You have some concerns about people associating you with this topic, maybe in your personal life or professional life?
Absolutely, and look what happened to John Leir. He was off, and look at the pilots that flew the 747 from Paris to Hawaii over Alaska that was harassed. They went right to a desk job. A lot of people believe in it, but they don't want to talk about it, and they don't want the publicity. So, yeah, honestly, now that's all going on. I like Jeremy to buzz out my face, and I can step out of this and call it a night, because it's we all watch the news, we see the Looney Tunes, and I just don't want to be in the public eye anymore. I mean, it's interesting. Listen, he writes me a check for $100,000 for a screenplay. I'm done. I mean,
we're not talking about recurring dreams or sleep paralysis or hallucinations here, though, right?
No, those days are long gone. I don't even think I actually believe there was something in my room as a child for years, afraid to go to sleep. Back then it was just the boogeyman or whatever it may have been, but now this has all come together with the implant theory. Who knows back in the 60s what these things were. I knew what I saw back in 95, but
what?
The images were different when I was younger than today, or it was in the 90s. 90s was just stereotype, big-eyed, skull, skinny body. You couldn't tell if they were wearing a suit or not, type of alien. I mean, I got up, put my feet along the bed, and it's like, oh, my God, I'm going to have to, knock some heads together. I mean, it's that frightening. I knew that's my only way out of the house, and they were in my way, and but they just disappeared. I mean, so who knows what we're dealing with here? I mean, you talk about the video from Mexico with the drug enforcement people, and they saw the objects with infrared. I mean, who knows what's in our sky that we're not seeing, or what's right on the other side of the curtain. I mean, you start going, like you said, down the rabbit hole, and there's just multiple options where we're living. I mean, to think that we crawled out of the ocean and, that whole story, and then you go back to believing in the King James Version. All the doctors I know say our bodies are created. It's just not by chance. So who was the creator? So you go down that road also. So I kind of put my life in. We've been created hopefully by a good spirit, rather than there's all these gnarly aliens going around and hybrid programs and that whole story. I mean, it's tough to think about. I mean, obviously, over the years, from E.T. to what's on the television now, are they just kind of warming us up to the idea that this is true? I mean, but they started you off in little steps, and then is Hollywood connected to the whole story? And you throw in the government's already talking to them. Look what the government's doing to our country now. So obviously they can't be good guys.
Patient 17, let me ask you this. In all your lifetime of encounters with these beings, have you ever picked up any clues, or have they told you what it is that they want, why they're here?
I never talked to them. I barely remember seeing them as a kid and a couple times as an adult, so I have no idea why they're here or anything like that. It's just a complete wash.
Had you gone to other doctors before you went to Dr. Leir?
No, just my MD, because I thought I may need a knee replacement. I mean, the pain that was coming out of this one knee was like somebody was smashing it with a sledgehammer. And the funny thing is, once it was discovered with x-rays, the pain went away. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But it was just a fluke. We found it, and just a fluke. I was talking to somebody about UFOs and common interests and this thing with my leg, and he introduced me to Leir, and it ran like wildfire after that. I mean, people in the UFO world, I found out, are really excited about anything new, because obviously a lot of it's just the same old stuff from YouTube.
Right. I mean, you didn't want to be a part of this, and that was the thing. I mean, it took, like, you know, we kind of went on this journey together. You know, when Dr. Leir passed away, patient 17 and I kind of looked at each other with saucer eyes, like, what's going to happen now? And what I find so interesting is that, okay, we all know John Mack, you know, Harvard psychiatry. I mean, he looked into this, and, you know, he said this phenomenon is real. And what I find so fascinating is the way that patient 17 describes these beings. I mean, he called them, I mean, in my film, he talks about this, you know, alien gangsters, that they're sinister. He believes what's going on is sinister. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
It's just a personal opinion, really. Not much more to say. I mean, they're coming into your home. They're doing what they want with people, abductions. I mean, how can that be a good positive thing? So if this whole story is true, I mean, there's some heavy-duty stuff going on in our world. I mean, not to count out everything else that's going on in the world when you turn on the news. I mean, it's just amazing. I'm still not convinced, to tell you the truth. I mean, there's just not enough energy. The only thing I really feel that's newsworthy is the video Dr. Leir shot in Turkey. At night with that one craft where you can almost see something in the windows. I mean, I was in his office when he was talking about filming that, and so there's somebody I personally know that shot that. So unless somebody can debunk that, I mean...
Right, and that's also what's interesting, is that you were kind of on a learning curve about all this ufology as well. I mean, it's like you go to this doctor, you're in his office, and then he starts talking to you about, you know, his history with all this. And I remember very distinctly, and this is actually something that we caught in the film, is that Dr. Leir says to you, well, we got one out. And you said, what, does that mean that I could have more? I could be tagged in other places? And he says, yes. And he goes, you know, do you want to learn more about this? Do you want to go through like a regression or try to uncover past memories? And I remember this. I mean, it gave me goosebumps. You turned to him and you says, no. You said, you know, this is enough. I don't want to remember. And
well, like I said, people get excited over this topic. I mean, it's a lot more people are excited about it than, you know, even 20 years ago. And because maybe we're getting closer to disclosure, but yeah, I just don't. I have other things going on in my life, and it's nothing I can control. And I don't live being an abductee. Really, it was out of sight, out of mind. I didn't even think about my leg having issues until I met somebody else in the film department. Once my doctor said it's just a piece of metal from God knows where, from childhood, and it's lodged in the place in your leg where it's never going to bother you. Just leave it alone. And so I was just going to leave it alone. I had the x-rays and put them in the sock drawer and called it a day until I showed these x-rays to somebody else, and their eyes just like lit up. And it was just steamroller all the way to where we're at today. I mean, honestly, I would never do this again. I mean, it's just not worth it. I mean, what does it prove? I mean,
right. You said
videos of spaceships with aliens, and nobody believes it. So unless you have a Mars attack type situation or something off the wall like that, Independence Day, the general public's not going to go for this. I mean, just people are open-minded.
Right. You've said, sorry to jump in, but it's just, you know, your story is so powerful to me. I mean, you said to me that, like, you know, that you don't live your life, you know, focusing on the UFO experiences and all of this, and it's kind of like dredged up this world that's been happening to you, or happened to you mainly as a child and then into adulthood, that you didn't really want to acknowledge or even remember. I mean, you told me at one point they must have, you know, spared you some of the memories because you remember parts of it and then it's gone.
Well, I never even thought about my childhood stuff until I got involved with all of you. I mean, then it's like, well, how about back then? And then how about that? Maybe this is all falling into place. So really, I went through life never thinking about my childhood and spooky things. And I remember the the terror and whatnot. But it's on the bottom of my list of things I need to worry about, or even continue to worry about.
It must spill over into your personal life, whether you try to put it out of your head or not, doesn't it?
Well, I'm sure it has. I mean, cool. My nicknames are Cody, as in Kodiak Bear, and Eeyore. So I'm dealing with some type of issues. But I actually lived a normal life, like sports and dirt biking and music and things, and I'm not like the typical who wants to be on television and it's his moment of fame, and I want to go to the convention and sit at the booth and sell plastic ETs. I mean, it's just, I'm not going to go down that road. I mean, the only reason why I even met Jeremy is because, like, minutes before my surgery, Dr. Leir's like, well, this is Jeremy, he's doing a special on me, and he's going to be part of the crew. And really, even at that moment, it's like, that wasn't part of the deal. So
right, and then I remember as well how people flooded the waiting room, and you see that also in the film Patient 17, is that you like escaped through the back door. I mean, it was amazing how the waiting room got flooded. I felt bad for you.
Well, that's why Jeremy got brownie points that day, because he actually looked after me in a way and shooed everybody back and got the cameras back in the purses, and he ran crowd control. And I appreciated that. And he actually had my back, I believe, from the start of this, and that's why I've gone through with this. After surgery was over, if Jeremy wasn't around, it would have been a done deal over with, because Jeremy's piece is definitely getting a lot of play. And I'm amazed, to tell you the truth, totally amazed.
Well, the fact that you're here says that you trust the guy, but you don't trust everyone in the UFO field. I mean, I've seen pieces of that, what was going on around you, a lot of hoopla, and I know you've been treated shabbily by some folks. We're not going to get into naming them or calling them out, but I mean, I would not be surprised if you just walked away from it, washed your hands, and never looked back.
I've got a lot out of the experience, unless we can get the original piece back and see really what it is, or do more tests on it. It's pretty much a done deal, unless Jeremy wants to do something else, another project down the road. I'd be more than happy. But right now, this is kind of leading up to, I think he's having an opening somewhere, a showing, and I just hope the best for him, because he's just really a talented filmmaker and a great guy. I call him my samurai, because he really has some words of wisdom to give me. And hopefully we can stay friends for a long time and do some dirt biking and call it a day.
Jeremy, let's talk about the object. So the piece was taken out of his leg. Some of it was analyzed. Is there some left? And if so, where is it? Yeah,
this is a really difficult topic, and it's difficult because, essentially Patient 17 and I have had a real difficulty getting to analyze the piece further. And that's no surprise. I mean, you'll see in the film some of the problems we run into. You'll feel our frustration. And right now, after, Dr. Leir passes away, and then there's a struggle. There's a struggle for ownership, I hear, of the piece. So it really makes it hard for us to get our hands on it and do the scientific analysis and do it further, which we'd love to do. But ultimately, we had some great tests done, and the tests came back anomalous. But again, there's two parts. There's the actual analysis, the scientific analysis, and then there's the interpretation of that analysis. And that can vary widely depending upon the individual. I mean, I went to the head meteorite specialist at UCLA to find out the elemental composition of like a mountain or a meteorite, and it's like everybody just has a different opinion on it. So right now the pieces are kind of in unknown hands, because it was Steve Colburn who had them, but I hear there's a little battle for who owns them, and it's sad, and I don't know. I really think Patient 17 should have his sample back so we can find out a little bit more. But that's the frustrating part.
I'm just afraid, if Steve loses them and somehow in technicality other people get them, they're going to end up on eBay for God knows what. And they're always going to be out of circulation in somebody's collection. I mean, and they need to stay public. and stay in the system. So maybe someday when we have better tests, we can find out what's going on. But
right.
I think they're just going to go to eBay one of these days, and it's just pathetic. I mean, that needs to be stopped. I just found out about that recently.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I want my piece back. I don't want mine going to some guy's collection and they're gone forever.
You don't know for sure what it is because there's still additional tests you'd like to do. But, Jeremy, could you address the idea about whether this could still be an accidental sliver of metal that somehow got into his leg?
Right. So look, this is a really difficult thing to answer because I've gotten so many different opinions. But essentially, it is machined, it is fabricated, it is highly advanced. It's 35 or 36 different alloys. Again, some of which are toxic alloys in small degrees. I talked with a nanotoxologist that basically, looked at the whole analysis and told me, yeah, it was really good that patient 17 got it out of his leg because from a toxicology standpoint, you don't want this in you. Now, from a nanotechnology perspective, I was told by a number of nanotechnologists this was a machined metal, and it has some rare earth elements in it. The big thing for me was the isotopic analysis. We have, for sure, an anomaly in the zinc. And I'm going to make all this public for people to scrutinize. I mean, that's part of the thing. Let's put these documents out and let people scrutinize them. But even further, when I went to the head zinc isotopic analysis guy for extra-terrestrial materials, there's actually one of them, and he's like a doctor in Middle America. It's amazing. I found the guy through a scientific paper of his online. I mean, I did some real digging. And he said, yes, your test shows something anomalous, but depending on how the test was done, you can have anomalies. So he said you really need to get multiple tests and cross-compare them. And he's right. That's the scientific method. So you'll see in the film where it takes us, but I can say that it is not a nail,
Hey, patient 17, let me ask you this. A lot of the abductee, contactee reports that we've gotten over the decades, the people involved will say something positive, like the visitors, the aliens, delivered a little editorial, like take care of the planet, or cut down on nuclear weapons, or be kind to one another, messages like that. You think that's a diversion? Did you get anything positive, and do you think there's any positive angle to this?
Well, I'm over here kind of laughing because it sounds like a beauty pageant. Everybody wants world peace and things like that.
I know.
So maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So, if they really meant to, they've been around since the pyramid days, you'd think something would have happened by now. It just seems like the planet's just spinning out of control. So if anything was here to be positive, I would hope they hurry up and say hello because obviously we all know what's going on in the world, and it just seems like it can't be controlled anymore. So it's no, I didn't get any message. I just have nightmares of seeing creatures and sensations and a piece of mystery metal in my leg and this whole adventure. So, but it makes you think about everything from creation to what's out there as far as the Hubble telescope can see. You go to observatories and go to museums, and you look at these photos of the universe and outward. It's like, really, what is the story? Maybe some people know. I mean, when you're flying around in the space station above Earth, who knows what those guys are seeing, and they're not saying anything. So there's more to the story. I'm kind of a newbie in this. I'm sure you and Jeremy know a lot more than I do about the history of these UFOs. I've just kind of ponied up a little bit since I've been dealing with this. But I say there's more chance of this all being a true story than not.
Well, I've never had an encounter. I've never had an encounter like you've had, and Jeremy hasn't either. But I'd like to know, you didn't get any alien editorials, but I'm sure you've formed impressions. You don't have a sense that they're here for our benefit, do you?
Not at all. Not at all. But that's just my opinion, just because you look at what's happening in the world. Now, maybe with technology, I don't know if it's really better for us, but maybe in the medical profession we're being helped. I mean, who knows? Velcro, microwaves, who knows what's been brought around from like the Roswell days. I mean, I believe in what happened to Roswell is true. I mean, all that effort for a weather balloon or something? I mean, let's be serious. So there's definitely some truth to all of this. And if the object in my leg is part of it, we don't know yet.
Jeremy, let me ask you what it was about patient 17 that you found to be credible, why you are going out on the limb this far to share his story. I mean, there are a lot of abductee stories that, they sound like you could drive a truck through them, but this one, something registered with you.
Yeah, it really was because he was a bigger skeptic than any of us. It was really because the situation, was that he wanted answers. And then when Dr. Leir passed away, I mean, I could see it. I mean, we had become friends, and he wasn't getting answers. I mean, I could see it even in the first, when Dr. Leir was here, you'll see in the film, he gets frustrated. Patient 17 gets frustrated with Dr. Leir because he's just not getting the answers. And so it was his personality, that he was the biggest skeptic, that he wasn't just trying to sell me a whole line of BS, that he wanted to know the truth too. And, we're doing our darndest to get there, and I guess some things we'll know, some things we won't. That's part of a great mystery, is that you don't get everything spoon-fed to you. And, I would like to mention, because, we're already in this deep. Patient 17 knows that. I mean, this is out. But tonight, for the Coast to Coast audience, it's an exclusive thing. You can see the film. I'm calling it the pre-premiere. I reserve the right to add to it if anything changes or new information comes to light. This is a real-life investigation. But they can actually get that tonight. I did that for the Coast audience exclusively. It's, the whole movie.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
And how do you like it, Patient 17? How do you like the movie?
It's good. I think it's not a major dollar production, something like 4th of July, but it tells the story, and I like the way he put it together. He let me have a little say in it, the motorcycle riding, and bringing some of my personal life into it, some shots like that. But he made it fun and interesting, and we, like he said, we walked down this path together and just trying to find out what the truth is. And I give it an A. I mean, it's a great I mean, it beats anything on YouTube if you could surf that and UFOs. I mean, it's really personal. It's modern. The way it's shot, the way it's edited. I mean, it's a good piece. I would have never done it if he was a total flake.
It strikes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, and I'm sure you wouldn't be talking to Jeremy if you didn't know his business. So, I mean, I feel fortunate to hang out with him and all the experiences I've had up to this point. But we'll see where it goes from here, Jeremy.
Well, I think that it seems that you're not as concerned as I thought you were about your identity getting out. Some people around you must know, because how many 6'9" abductee motorcycle riding guys are there? Patient 17, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us, and best of luck to you. I hope we get to meet you in person.
If you want to listen to our show ad-free 24/7, access audio archives, live chat with me, and much more, you need to become a Coast Insider now.
So you're telling me your grandmother, who died a few weeks ago, came and visited you last night in your bedroom, and you're not scared?
Are extraterrestrials living among us?
I don't know if it's true or not, folks, but we're going to find out.
If you enjoy stories like these and want to learn more about the mysteries of the universe with me, become a Coast Insider now to access hundreds of our archive shows to listen anytime, anywhere. Sign up now at coasttocoastam.com/Coast Insider. That's coasttocoastam.com/Coast Insider.